address the process of separating out the 4 channels of a cyan, magenta, yellow, and black image so that we can create transparencies for making separations for a screen print that would be full color. Would be, of course, a pixelated screen print. Not pixelated, but a dot structure, halftone dot structure, CMYK process color print. Once you've got your image open here in Photoshop, you want to make sure that it is the correct size. Go to Image, Image Size. My image is a very small image, 3.5 by 6.25 at 300 pixels per inch. And you want your image to be at 300 pixels per inch. That's an appropriate print resolution. I have cropped this image down from a larger image. So this would be a fairly small image. We're going to change the mode from the traditional red, green, blue color, which is the additive color theory model of light, to the subtractive color theory of pigment, which is cyan, magenta, yellow, black. So in our channels here, or if you don't have channels open, you can go to Window and select Channels. You can see that we have our separate channels. Here's a cyan channel. We isolate that, magenta, yellow, and black. And you'll see that typically, especially with nature photography, yellow is going to have a high saturation and high coverage. Black is always going to be fairly low, and in this case, for sure, the key image is going to have just a little bit of detail. Cyan and magenta are typically kind of flat, particularly with cyan here. And then, of course, you have the full model. One of the problems that we face is that in screen printing, we need to have black dots and white dots, nothing in between. And here we have, of course, a lot of gray. So we need to convert each one of these channels into its own document that has the values articulated through halftone dots that our eyes then perceptually perceive as gray, black, white, etc. So I'm going to treat this image as a master, and I want to have the letter CMYK here in their appropriate colors off to the side. So I'm going to expand the canvas, go to Image, Canvas Size, anchor the canvas to the right here. You could anchor it at the bottom if you wanted to, or at the top, depending on the orientation of your image. And I'm going to type 4.5 just to add an inch onto the side. And then I'm going to go to the type tool. I've got it set for vertical type because I want it to go vertically, but you could set it horizontally if you had your expansion at the bottom or the top. Double click on the color picker, and for cyan we're going to dial in 100% cyan and 0 for the other 3 values. Click and type the letter C. Double click on the color picker again, 0 out the cyan, boost the magenta to 100, and zeros on the other values. Type the letter M, double click the picker, 0 out, magenta, boost yellow to 100%, type the letter Y, and finally we're going to 0 out yellow and boost the black to 100. Pardon me, I'll have to somehow edit that out. Say OK. And type the letter K. K stands for key. If we look at our layers palette, we can see we have 2 layers now. We're going to flatten these, come to the flyout menu, and flatten the image. We go back to our Channels tab, isolate cyan, select all, or Command A to select all the pixels on that channel, edit copy, or Command C to copy all those pixels and send them to the clipboard, File New, or Command N to bring up a new file that reads the dimensions of the clipboard, Create, Edit, Paste, or Command V to paste those pixels into their own document. We'll do that with all of the channels from the master. You can see that the pixels are still selected, so I don't need to select those pixels anymore. I can simply Command C for copy, Command N for a new file, V to paste, Command theta to get back to the master, and isolate the yellow, Command C, Command N, return, Command V, Command theta, isolate the black, Command C, Command N, return, Command V, and we have all of our separate channels out on their own files now. And I like to go back to the master and click on the CMYK so I can tell that this is the master. I don't need to do any more work on this file. I'll still keep it here. Here we are in the cyan channel, and we're going to convert all of these gray pixels into either black or white pixels, and they'll be distributed either more dense where there's more value or further apart where there's less value. Image, mode, bitmap. Anytime you see these ellipses, it's going to bring up a new window for you to make decisions in. Yes, it's okay to flatten the layers. Here's the bitmap window. The output is automatically reading the input resolution, so 300 pixels per inch is where we want to be. And the method that we're going to use is the halftone screen method. You could use diffusion dither if you wanted to, but it's not going to create the same kind of image that a halftone screen will create for a multicolor image. Diffusion dither might work really well for a single run black and white print. Of course, here are the ellipses, which means we're going to have to make more decisions when we say OK. The frequency refers to how many lines of this pattern of dots are going to occur in 1 square inch. And for the screens that I use, which are mesh count 220, you divide 220 by 4, and that gives you roughly 55. We'll bring up the calculator here. So we'll leave that at 55. And the angle of the distribution of these dots is important. We'll change the angle for each of these separations. For cyan, it needs to be set at 115 angles or degrees in that angle, and the shape of the pattern should be elliptical. Avoid these other more square kinds of looks because the mesh itself has a grid square, and the ellipse can articulate more of the image across a grid than any other pattern. So we'll say OK here, and when we zoom in, you can see how the dots are at that 115 angle or degree angle, has kind of an elliptical pattern, and you can also see how they're distributed according to the value structure of the image. My printer does not read bitmaps, so I have to reconvert this back first to grayscale. Size ratio 1 is good, and then I usually just put it right back into CMYK at this point. My printer reads that really well. It doesn't change anything visually, but programmatically it works. Then I simply save the file. This one's going to be cyan, and I'll come up with an idea. This is a palm tree, so we'll put it in a folder for color separations, palm, save as a Photoshop document. And we'll go to the magenta channel. It's on its own file. Of course, we have the same problem of gray pixels. So we'll go through the same process: image, mode, bitmap. Yes, flatten layers, 300 pixels per inch is good, halftone screen is good, 55 lines per inch is good. The only thing we're going to change here is the angle. We're going to put that at 105 for magenta. Say OK. You zoom in, you can see the 105 degree angle there. We're going to convert this back to grayscale first, and then just put it in the CMYK color. save. This is going to be magenta, palm.psd. Here we are with the yellow, image, mode, bitmap. It's okay to flatten the layers, 300 pixels per inch, halftone screen. Yellow is going to take the angle of 0. Yellow has the least amount of contrasty presence, so it's going to take the most obvious angle, so nothing else pronounces itself in the most obvious angle, which is kind of this grid-like angle. Convert this back to grayscale and then to CMYK, save. Yellow, palm, Photoshop. And finally, the key image, same process, bitmap, halftone screen, and here we will do 45 degrees for the black, or the key image. You can see that 45 degree run there. File, save, black, palm, Photoshop. Now these would be essentially ready for printing on the transparent media. I like to use Pictorica Ultra Premium overhead projection film. It works really well to hold the Epson ink, and it blocks light really well for exposure on the screen. I'm not going to actually print this image. This is just for instance, I have another video that talks about how you can mock up the image to make it look, so you can see what the screen print's going to look like with all these dots coming together, and you can see that video here. Thanks for watching.